What I witnessed yesterday in that Senate hearing will haunt me for the rest of my career. And I've covered some of the most explosive moments in American politics, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what Senator Cory Booker unleashed on Attorney General Pam Bondi when he caught her in the most devastating lie I've ever seen told under oath. Most people think they know what happened with the Epstein files. Most people believe the cover-up ended when powerful figures managed to bury the story. But what Booker revealed yesterday proves that the conspiracy goes deeper than anyone imagined, and the person at the center of it isn't who you think. Before we go any further, you need to understand something. I've spent decades in this business. I've watched politicians lie, deflect, and evade with masterful precision. But what I saw yesterday was different. This wasn't political theater. This wasn't partisan gamesmanship. This was raw, unfiltered truth colliding with institutional corruption. And when that collision happened, everything changed. Let me start with what everyone thought they knew. For months, the Biden administration had promised transparency about Jeffrey Epstein. They promised that suppressed documents would finally see daylight. They assured Congress and the American people that justice would be served. Attorney General Bondi herself had testified repeatedly that the Justice Department was committed to releasing every relevant file. But here's what nobody knew was happening behind the scenes. While Bondi was making these public promises, she was secretly coordinating with Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh to ensure that the most damaging documents would remain buried forever. Not just delayed, not just redacted, permanently destroyed. Think about what this means. We're talking about a sitting Supreme Court justice secretly collaborating with the Attorney General to obstruct justice. We're talking about two of the most powerful legal minds in America conspiring to hide evidence that could expose corruption at the highest levels of government. Yesterday, Senator Booker proved it, and watching Bondi's face when he presented the evidence was like watching someone's entire world collapse in real time. It started innocently enough. Booker began with what seemed like routine oversight questions. Had Bondi spoken with any Supreme Court justices about ongoing cases? Had there been any coordination between the Justice Department and the court regarding sensitive documents? Standard stuff that any attorney general should be able to answer without breaking a sweat. But then something extraordinary happened. Bondi started sweating. "I want to be very clear about the timeline here," Booker said, his voice taking on that tone that every seasoned reporter recognizes, the tone that means someone is about to get buried. "Ms. Bondi, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you have discussions with Justice Kavanaugh about suppressing the release of Epstein-related documents before you were confirmed to this position?" Bondi's answer was telling, not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't say. She deflected. She talked about the complexity of national security reviews. She mentioned ongoing investigations, but she never said no. Booker pressed harder. "That's not what I asked, Ms. Bondi. Did you or did you not discuss with Justice Kavanaugh strategies for preventing the release of Epstein documents? Yes or no?" What came next was 8 seconds of silence. 8 seconds might not sound like much, but in a congressional hearing, under oath on national television, 8 seconds of silence is an eternity. It's a confession without words. It's the sound of someone realizing their career is about to end. "Senator," Bondi finally said, "I cannot discuss privileged communications between the Justice Department and the Supreme Court." That's when Booker dropped the hammer. "Ms. Bondi, I have here phone records showing 17 calls between your office and Justice Kavanaugh's chambers in the 3 weeks leading up to your confirmation. 17 calls. Would you like to explain to this committee what those calls were about?" The room went dead silent. You could hear reporters shifting in their seats. You could see Bondi's legal team frantically passing notes. You could watch in real time as one of the most powerful people in America realized that her lies had finally caught up with her, but Booker wasn't finished. "I also have here email communications between your chief of staff and Justice Kavanaugh's clerks discussing what they called damage control protocols. Would you like me to read those emails aloud, Ms. Bondi? Or would you prefer to tell this committee the truth?" What happened next will be studied in law schools for decades. Bondi, one of the most experienced attorneys in America, completely lost composure. She started talking over Booker. She accused him of violating executive privilege. She claimed the documents were fabricated. She demanded to know how he obtained them. She did everything except answer the question. That's when I knew we were witnessing something historic. Because experienced lawyers don't panic unless they're caught. They don't make wild accusations unless they're desperate. And they don't destroy their own credibility unless they're hiding something so damaging that exposure would be worse than public humiliation. Booker let her dig her own grave. He waited for her to finish her tirade, and then he said something that will echo through American history. Ms. Bondi, your evasion is answer enough. But let me share with this committee and the American people exactly what you and Justice Kavanaugh have been hiding. What came next was devastating. Booker revealed that the suppressed Epstein documents contained evidence of financial relationships between Epstein and multiple Supreme Court justices. Not just social connections, not just casual acquaintanceships, financial relationships that would constitute clear conflicts of interest in any case involving Epstein's network. More importantly, the documents showed that Kavanaugh had received what Booker described as substantial financial benefits from entities connected to Epstein's operation. Benefits that were never disclosed during his confirmation hearings. Benefits that would disqualify him from sitting on any case involving Epstein-related matters. But here's the truly explosive part. The documents also revealed that Kavanaugh had been instrumental in burying similar evidence about other justices. He wasn't just protecting himself, he was orchestrating a cover-up that reached across the entire Supreme Court. Watching Bondi's reaction to these revelations was like watching someone realize their house is on fire while they're still inside. She tried to interrupt. She demanded that Booker stop reading classified information. She threatened to walk out of the hearing. None of it worked, because once the truth starts flowing, you can't stop it. And the truth was flowing like a river yesterday. Booker continued methodically. Ms. Bondi, these documents show that you knew about Justice Kavanaugh's conflicts of interest before you agreed to suppress the files. You knew that releasing them would expose corruption on the Supreme Court, and you chose to participate in a cover-up rather than uphold your oath to defend the Constitution. The implications are staggering. If Booker's evidence is accurate, we're looking at the biggest judicial scandal in American history. We're talking about Supreme Court justices who are compromised by financial relationships with one of the most notorious criminals of our time. We're talking about an attorney general who chose loyalty to corrupt justices over loyalty to the American people. But what makes this even more explosive is the timing. These cover-up discussions weren't happening in some back room months ago. They were happening in real time, while Congress was demanding transparency, while families of victims were pleading for justice, while the American people were being told that truth and accountability mattered. Bondi and Kavanaugh were lying to everyone. They were coordinating their lies, and they thought they would never get caught. The most chilling moment came when Booker read directly from one of the intercepted communications. It was a message from Kavanaugh's office to Bondi's team that said, "The Chief Justice is aware and supportive. We have consensus that these files can never see daylight. Too many people would be implicated. Too many people would be implicated. Let that sink in. We're not talking about protecting national security. We're not talking about preserving ongoing investigations. We're talking about protecting powerful people from accountability." When Booker finished reading that message, something broke in the room. You could see it in senators' faces. You could hear it in the sudden murmur from the gallery. You could feel it in the way the atmosphere shifted from routine oversight to historic reckoning. Bondi tried one last desperate gambit. She claimed the documents were Russian disinformation. She suggested that Booker was part of a foreign influence operation. She accused him of treason for exposing classified information. It was pathetic, and everyone in that room knew it. Booker's response was surgical. Ms. Bondi, these documents were obtained through legal subpoenas issued by this committee with bipartisan support. They were authenticated by the FBI's own forensic teams. Your accusations against me are nothing more than the desperate lies of someone who's been caught red-handed. Then came the moment that will define this scandal. Booker looked directly at the camera and said something that every American needed to hear. The Supreme Court of the United States has been compromised by criminal relationships. The Attorney General of the United States has participated in covering up that compromise. And the American people deserve to know the full scope of this betrayal. The hearing room erupted. Reporters were rushing to file stories. Senators were demanding immediate investigations. Bondi's own staff was quietly slipping out the back doors. But the most telling reaction was Bondi's. She sat there in stunned silence, realizing that her career, her reputation, and possibly her freedom had just evaporated on national television. This isn't going away. This isn't something that can be spun or managed or buried under the next news cycle. This is the kind of scandal that brings down governments. This is the kind of corruption that destroys institutions. And it's just beginning. Because if Booker is right about what's in those files, Kavanaugh and Bondi are just the tip of the iceberg. We could be looking at a conspiracy that reaches into every corner of the federal government. The question now isn't whether there will be consequences. The question is how severe those consequences will be. Because what we witnessed yesterday wasn't just a politician getting caught in a lie. It was democracy defending itself against institutional corruption. Senator Booker didn't just expose a cover-up, he saved the country from it. And every American owes him a debt of gratitude for having the courage to speak truth to power when the stakes couldn't have been higher. But here's what terrifies me about what we learned yesterday. This wasn't a rogue operation by a few bad actors. The phrase, "the Chief Justice is aware and supportive," tells us that this corruption has infected the very top of our judicial system. We're not talking about isolated misconduct. We're talking about systematic, coordinated efforts to subvert justice at the highest levels of American government. I've been covering politics for decades, and I've seen scandals that brought down presidents, destroyed careers, and shattered public trust. But I've never seen anything that threatens the constitutional order itself like this does. When Supreme Court justices become compromised by criminal relationships, when they actively work to hide evidence of their own corruption, the entire foundation of our legal system crumbles. What happens next will define whether America survives as a constitutional republic or transforms into something unrecognizable. Because if these revelations don't trigger immediate impeachment proceedings, if Congress doesn't act swiftly to remove compromised justices, if the American people don't demand accountability at every level, then we're essentially accepting that corruption is acceptable as long as it's conducted by people in positions of power. This is why oversight matters. This is why transparency matters. This is why having brave people willing to ask hard questions matters. Because without them, corruption wins. Without them, the powerful escape accountability. Without them, democracy dies. But yesterday, democracy won. Truth won. And Cory Booker reminded us all why we can never stop fighting for both.